Here are the figures for the mermaid creche. So I had the artwork as usual printed on fabric and the sewing guide as well. And I'm going to sew those on the line on the sewing machine, and here they are. And next I have to cut these out. I'm not sure why I did this design the way I did. The tail is just too close to the body, and it's very hard to cut and super hard to invert this. But I have to say it's one of my favorite shapes once I have fought through the inverting part of it. I just love the way it looks. So that was the little baby for the creche, and this is the mermaid, Mary and Joseph, and this is the baby. And then after I cut them out, I cut a hole in the back so I can turn it inside out, and I use my skewer to do that, and just being careful to push out all of the corners and the little tail on the baby. I always had mixed feelings about this one because I always thought, am I being sacrilegious by doing this? Because they're mermaid, it's a mermaid, Mary and Joseph and Jesus. But what the heck, I felt moved to do it, and I love the way it came out. So here they are, the Mary and Joseph inverted. This really is a great shape. In fact, I should make ornaments like this because it's so darn cute. And the next part, of course, is the stuffing it, and I will be sewing a little detail stitching on this the way I did on the human creche and in a previous episode. And so I'm stuffing this. I'm stuffing it really firmly, actually, but I probably shouldn't have stuffed it as firmly because later on I had a little trouble separating the tail from the body. Once you stuff it, it curls up a little bit more, and so it's touching the body, which I wish it didn't, but I love the shape of this, and I don't even think I would change it because I like it so much. I would definitely have it printed on different fabric though. Spoonflower, where I get it printed, changed their fabric, and they went from a nice soft Kona cotton to some kind of, I want to use the word cheap. I shouldn't be using that word, but cheaper fabric that's probably less expensive for them to print on. And it's very, very stiff and very hard to invert these tiny little shapes for me. But there is a really nice fabric called the organic cotton sateen, which is what I use now, and it's nice and soft. So luckily they had a alternative. Once I stuff it, I sew these closed, and then I'm going to have to sew the detail stitching on the sewing machine. So I just do a couple of things. I sew down the middle of the figures, and then I also just sew where the shell edge is on the baby. So here they are. And I sewed the crown as well, and then on the baby, here's the detail stitching. Just gives it a little extra detail and looks really great. So I'm going to paint the backs of these first, and originally I was just going to paint just the edges, but I ended up, because you don't want to have the white edges showing on the front, but I ended up painting the whole back just because if you wanted to just use this by itself without a diorama as an ornament, you would probably want to paint the back at least one color, but I just painted it. Tried to match the colors that are on the front, and I'm using my beautiful metallic paints, fabric paints for the bottoms, and then I use the tulip fabric paints for the top, for the flesh color, I should say. So I'm using an indigo color, which is perfect for this project. And they're metallic, so they have a little bit of sparkle to them. Although once everything is dried and finished, I would probably also do a clear coat of glittered fabric paint over it, just for an extra sparkle to it. To give it an extra sparkle is what I'm trying to say, but having a hard time doing it. So once I paint the backs of these, I have to let them dry before doing anything else. I also paint the fronts of these because I think the paints are really pretty, even though I have the colors printed on the fabric. I almost always go over them with the fabric paints just because they're so luminous, and I love the way they look. Now I'm painting the back of the shell that the baby is laying in, and I didn't need to do that because I just needed to do the edges because it's going to get glued onto the Mary and Joseph. So that's the indigo color I use, and that's the purple I use for the fronts. And I use this pen, this metallic paint marker, and also this folk art paint, which is a really great gold. And that last one I showed you was a dimensional paint that I use on the Mary just to add a little bit of detail. So I'm painting the fronts now. I love the shape of these. That would make a really cute ornament. I should just make those into ornaments too. Well, it will be an ornament at the end, but it has an extra little feature to it that you'll have to wait till next week to see what that is. So I'm just finishing up painting these. And next, this is the tulip dimensional paint that I'm going to add dots to the tail of the Mary mermaid. And I love the way this adds a little extra detail. So once you do that, you have to totally let those dry. And then the last part will be just to glue the baby on top of the two once that's dried. So I use my glue gun with a Gorilla Glue and then just position it wherever you feel it looks best, and you might have to move it around a little bit. And there it is. See you next week. Thanks for watching.